Which came first, the chicken or the egg? This question has been debated in society since the beginning of time, and it's led to some pretty raw arguments. While we can't answer that mind-boggling question, we can learn more about the feathered subject. On this edition of the Paw Report, we'll talk to Kathie Lawrence, the owner of Little Bit Farm in Coles County, about the time and care needed to raise chickens. Stay with us.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Paw Report. I'm your host, Kelly Goodwin, and I'm so glad that we've been joined today by Kathie Lawrence. She is the owner-operator of Little Bit Farm in Coles County, and today we are talking about a subject I know that we haven't talked about in years, and that is raising chickens. So Kathie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You know, first I want to introduce you to the viewers and talk about your farm, and all that good stuff.
Well, I came down here and went to school in Eastern in '77 and haven't left. And when I graduated, I had a horse, and the horse needed a place to live. And eventually I found this place and I bought it. And since then, it became Little Bit Farm. I have a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Hence the name.
Hence the name. Currently, there's about 100 chickens, and there's 36 sheep, and my dogs and cats. And
excellent. And it's home to you.
It's home.
All your
Absolutely
critters.
home.
Well, you mentioned 100 chickens, and that's what we're focusing on today on the Paw Report is raising chickens. Why would people raise chickens? Why do you raise chickens?
Part of it is I just like control over my food sources. I know what the chickens are fed. I know how they're taken care of. I know where they've been. You get a better quality product. It's just, they're fun to watch. You take your kitchen waste out and they all come running up to you and what do you got for me today?
So they run around. We're going to talk about housing and all of that good stuff. Do they know you? Are they,
oh, yeah.
I mean, are they kind of like a dog and a cat where, you know, more so like a pet? I mean, I know that you use them for other purposes, but do they have a personality?
You know, they're red and they're black at this point, and I really don't know who is who. But you walk out there and they come running up and go, what do you got for me today? Mm-hmm. So when the neighbor kids were around, there were a couple that were definitely pets, but they were chosen and they were carried around on shoulders. And
you mentioned kids and you mentioned the neighbor children. Chickens okay around to raise chickens around?
Oh, yeah.
Young people?
Yeah, I mean, common sense dictates that if you've got a little toddler walking in chicken poop, you need to clean things up a little more. And sometimes the roosters can be a little aggressive with little ones, and you know, they might need a new home, but I've not had a problem with that.
You know, I was reading about, because I have never raised chickens, but you hear the phrase a lot, pecking order. Is that actually true?
Oh, there is a pecking order.
There is a pecking order.
There is a pecking order.
And what is it, and what do you see when that happens?
They literally get pecked on if they're at the bottom. I mean, they peck on them and they're mean. You know, if you're top dog there, it's a good life, and if you're the bottom one, you tend to hide a little bit.
That's right. Now, if somebody wants to start raising chickens, I know you said you had 100, if not more. Let's go down to the bottom. If somebody wants to start raising them, what's your suggestion on how many to start with?
I don't know, 10 or 12. You know, when you first start, you're probably going to have a few losses, and that'll still leave you with others to grow up. Go to Rural King, get some chicks, and start at it.
It's easy to start with, yeah. What breeds? Are there different breeds of chicken?
Oh, yeah.
That you
there's all kinds of breeds. Personally, I'm raising them for the eggs, so I go with a laying breed. But you can get a meat breed if you wanted to raise them for meat, and you can get a combination, the heavy breeds that will do a decent job laying eggs and be big enough to be worth processing when they're done.
What types of breeds do you have?
I've got Rhode Island Red, I've got some red sex links, I got some black sex links. There's a couple Easter eggers, they lay some green eggs.
That's neat. And we're going to look at eggs a little bit later. You're going to talk about kind of the difference between what you can get at your local grocer and what you get on the farm. Those different types of breeds, do they lay different size eggs? You mentioned the color. The color
of the shell will be different, a little bit different. I mean, I can't walk out there and tell you who laid this eggs, but there's some that you can tell who laid them. Inside the egg is all the same. It doesn't matter. Some breeds do lay a little larger egg and some lay a little smaller egg.
What about taking care of hens versus chicks? I mean, I realize it's taking care of an infant versus an adult, but when you get them, I'm sure that the situation is a little bit different as far as grooming them and making them safe and sound.
Hens are easy. All you need to do is lock them up for a week or so till they learn where home is, and put food out and water out, and they're pretty well good to go. But with the chicks, you need to raise the temperature up to about 95 degrees and drop it by about 5 degrees a week as they get older and get feathers, and start out with some chick starter feed instead of regular feed.
When do the chicks actually develop into hens? I mean, what is the time frame for that?
You usually get your first eggs between about 6 months, 7 months. I mean, they're little tiny chicks to begin with, and by the time they're 6-8 weeks old, they're feathered and they look like little chickens.
Some people have asked, do you have to have a rooster on your farm to get eggs? And I guess it's a legitimate question to ask, and you would say
no.
No, you don't.
But the roosters are fun. They take care of their girls. They'll show them when there's a bunch of food. They'll call the girls over, and if there's a little bit of a threat, the roosters tend to stand up and take the first blow. And then there's always the crowing in the morning. Some people like it, some people don't.
Yes, that's true. Can you ever have too many roosters?
Absolutely.
They get a little out of control.
They start picking on the hens.
And why should, you mentioned some of the benefits, but why should people have roosters, or what's their role on the farm?
Well, if you want fertile eggs and hatch out your own chicks, you got to have a rooster.
When you first started, so if somebody out there is interested in maybe getting started, now you have a barn, a lot of people do it differently. Start to finish, we need to talk about kind of the process of, okay, if you're going to raise chickens, this is what you need to know.
My favorite way to start chicks is inside an old water tank, because there's no breeze. You hang a heat lamp over there and check the temperature. It's easy to raise the lamp higher or lower and control your temperature in there. And as they grow bigger, you're going to need some shelter for them. They need to be dry. It doesn't need to be insulated, and you don't want it waterproof. You want a little bit of a breeze. You don't want a wind, you want a breeze, because you want to keep the humidity out.
You have a barn, but some people choose to go the Coop route.
Right.
Differences, benefits.
The barn was already there. They kind of stole it from me. I moved the tractor out. I was tired of the chicken poop on it. If you have a small backyard flock, a coop makes much more sense. You just need a small building. It needs to be something with some ventilation so it doesn't get incredibly hot in the winter, incredibly hot in the summer. I've never had a problem with winter temperatures. They just sit a little closer together. Some people heat their coops. It's
just, did you have any learning experience, or did you just know, hey, I'm going to buy a farm and I'm just going to get started?
I had a little bit of experience here in town. Eastern Professor took care of my horse for a while, and did stuff like build barns and fences and any farm work that needed to be done. I did it. And growing up as a kid, the stables I rode at, I got to go out there on Saturday mornings and I could clean 30 stalls, and they'd let me do it for free. And if
I bet they would.
And if I was good, I'd get a pop with the lunch that I brought, and I could ride a horse for an hour in the afternoon. So, you learn a lot.
That's right. Do chickens need a lot of space? If somebody was just starting off small, had a few, how much space do they need? Your situation is a little bit different because you have room to run, but maybe for the beginner, the intermediate and the advanced, kind of what they're looking at as far as...
I think the legal requirement is 1.5 feet per bird, but that's not much space. Most backyard people, if the birds get out during the day, then 4 foot of coop space is probably plenty. But if they are locked in the coop all the time, then maybe 10 foot of coop space.
What if they were, let's talk about the coop. If they were building a coop, what would they need? I mean, is there certain perches that they need to put in there?
They'll need roosts, because at night they like to come up and sit up on a roost, up a little higher. They'll need nest boxes. You'll need water, and you'll need food, shade, and you need some protection from the wildlife, because a raccoon loves a chicken dinner.
I like to think that bathing, they try to find the nearest little puddle of water, but chickens not so much. They like to take what's called a dirt bath.
Yes, and it tends to keep the parasites down, and they will dig a hole in your yard and create it themselves if you let them.
And they just kind of feather around and that's how they keep themselves clean.
Yes.
They also use their beak, and don't they go through their feathers too to do kind of a cleaning process? Or
probably a little bit, yeah.
How do you clean a chicken coop? Now you've mentioned poop a lot in this episode.
With the big scoop shovel.
The big scoop shovel, but are they messy animals, and is it something daily hygiene, or especially somebody that just has a little area? Is that something that you need to make sure that you keep on top of?
I would say not daily. If it's a tiny area, maybe weekly. What's important is to keep it dry. I use wood shavings. Some people use straw, and you can tell if you walk in there and it smells like ammonia, it needs to be cleaned. But if you don't have the ammonia smell, you're in pretty good shape. You can add a little more shavings, keep your water away from where they're nesting so they don't spill it over there.
What sort of bedding do you use? I mean, is it straw? Is it hay? Is it wood chips?
I use the wood chips.
You use the wood chips.
It's easier to pick up in my mind. You use the straw or the hay and it all kind of forms together and you get a big old clod that's hard to get out of there, but the shavings just pick up nice.
What kind of food do they eat? Prior to us sitting down here and beginning our interview, I mentioned gardens, and I read somewhere where, when you have a garden and you've picked everything, the chickens love to run in there and get all the scraps. But you said, hold up. They also like the garden when it's growing.
Absolutely. After you're done harvesting, they're good. They'll till the soil up a little bit. They'll pull out some of the grubs and stuff that you don't want in there. They'll go through the waste food that's in there. But before you harvest your garden, they will poke a hole in your tomato. They will pull up your corn seedlings as they come up. You put a transplant in there and they can untransplant them as faster than you can plant them. You don't want them in your garden until you're done with it.
Traditionally, though, on a daily basis, when you go out and you do your errands in the morning, what is their food? And I'm sure that probably has some effect on essentially the eggs that they're going to lay.
Oh, absolutely. I go up and pick up a non-GMO corn-based chicken feed. That's just, I think it's a notch up from the regular stuff. And you look at it and you can see the corn in there and some of the other products, and there's minerals in there. A lot of people have oyster shell out, so the birds get enough calcium to build the shells of their eggs. Mm-hmm. Some people put grit out because they need grit to process their food. My guys run around loose. I don't worry about oyster shells. I don't worry about grit. They find enough on their own.
Mm-hmm. In your garden, right?
They're fenced out.
Now, there is something to be said about the hardness of the egg. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you find that with your eggs, sometimes they may be a little softer, sometimes the calcium buildup on the shell, harder, softer? Typically,
I'd say they're harder, just because the commercial eggs, they know exactly how much calcium they have to have a product that will last to get to the store. And there's no money in it to be putting extra calcium into the bird to make a thicker shell.
Craziest thing you've ever, you said, when Thanksgiving rolls around and you walk out the back door and you drop a few things for your birds, they love that. What's the craziest thing you've ever seen one of your chickens eat?
I've seen them fight over a snake.
You are a snake?
Yeah, a little one, but a snake. They're meat eaters. They'll eat anything.
But the best diet is the grains, I'm assuming.
The grains supplemented with what they get. You want them out on the fresh grass. You want them picking bugs and worms and whatever else they can find.
How many, or let's go back to seasons. Do they do well in hot and cold weather? You mentioned it briefly earlier. And then the second part of that question, does that have any effect on egg laying? So if it's springtime, when we're recording this program now, does it change in the summer when it's hot?
Different breeds do better. There's some that don't take the heat as well. There's some that are a little more cold tolerant. I can't tell you which ones they are. But the biggest thing is light. As the days get shorter, they stop laying as much. So come spring, as the days get longer, they pick up laying again. Typically, they lay more in the spring and summer and less in the winter. But in the winter, they've got to use their food to keep themselves warm. And they don't have the energy to be laying eggs also.
So is it a year-round thing? I mean, will they lay in the wintertime as well?
Yes.
It is a year-round thing.
Yes, but they don't lay as many. If they're giving you 6 eggs a week in the summer, you might get 4 or 3.
What do you do with all that manure?
I put it on the garden.
Or yard?
You could do that. As many chickens as I have, I tend to scoop it out into the tractor bucket and I put it out on the pasture. You've got to be careful applying manure to a garden where you're taking food out of it. There's rules about the timing between harvest and manure application. So this time of year I can't put it on the garden, but I can put it on the pasture.
If you'd say, like right now, during the springtime, you have 100 chickens, give or take some less, how many eggs do they lay in a week? So you're out there, and I want you to kind of take us through a day of your farm here in a second, but how many would all of those?
I'm getting about 7 dozen eggs a day.
A day?
A day.
So how do you collect all of them? You go out there and you just...
I walk out with a little bucket.
Styrofoam bucket and collect them all?
Start collecting them. I know where the nest boxes are, and I know where their favorite hiding spots are, and sometimes I find a new hiding spot. And when you find a new hiding spot, you throw those eggs away because you don't know how old they are, and then you start watching it.
Now it's time, you brought with you, when you came in, you had a plate and you had some eggs, and I think kind of the neat thing that we can describe to our viewers is talking about the difference between what they can get at the supermarket and what they can get from the local farm. So take us through, you've collected the eggs. Maybe first if you kind of show the camera the difference. Obviously, I'll let you talk about what we're seeing.
Okay, these are store-bought eggs, and these are my eggs, and there's no difference nutrition-wise between a white egg and a brown egg. It's just the color of the shell, and people tend to prefer the brown eggs when they buy from a farmer. It's just kind of traditional. You can see these are all very uniform in shape. Mine are not uniform, they have different colors. The biggest difference, though,
the yolk difference.
Yes. The yolk is much oranger in the farm egg than the city egg. That's because there's more nutrients in it. They're out eating grass, they're getting chlorophyll, they're getting sunshine. It makes a difference.
You know, one thing, and I don't know if there is a difference to it or how you get them, but you know, when you go and you purchase eggs, you might get jumbo eggs, you might get large eggs, you can get small eggs, you can get mini eggs. Do you have control over of that? Does that go with the breed of the...
I have no control over that.
Because I've noticed, you know, like you said, this little guy here is a lot smaller than the other ones. That one's a lot darker, but that has nothing to do with... does it have to do with the feed or the eat or
Well,
the
they've all got the
nutrients?
same feed. This is probably a younger bird. They tend to lay smaller eggs initially, and the older birds will lay much larger eggs. I didn't bring them; they don't fit in the carton.
They're that big.
Yeah. This is probably a different breed than these guys, and some of the breeds lay a little darker egg.
How long do the chickens live, and how long will they give you eggs?
A backyard chicken, they say, will live about 8 years. But at that point, if you're getting an egg a week, you're doing good. When they first start laying, theoretically, you get an egg a day. And at about a year and a half, they do a molt where they lose most of their feathers and they grow new feathers. And while they're molting, they don't lay. So the commercial folks get rid of them because they're not at their maximum production. I've kept them through the molt, and they'll still lay, but not as many eggs, but they will be bigger eggs.
And you said, going back to what we see here, is there a difference, a taste difference to the
huge
consumer
taste difference.
that you can dramatically tell?
Yes.
And that's for you. Is it just lighter? Is it?
It's got flavor to it. The yolk has got so much flavor to it. I had one customer tell me he didn't have to use jelly on his toast anymore because when he sopped up the yolk, there was already flavor there.
Oh my gosh!
But you can see the way this yolk stands up straight, and this one kind of goes flat and yucky. Part of that is freshness. But the color in here is just much more intense because of what they're eating and the quality of their nutrition.
Kathie, what's the most rewarding part for you? You have a long-standing tradition and history of being on the farm, but just, thinking about it, what's the most rewarding for you on your farm and your chickens?
I enjoy watching them. I enjoy eating the eggs. I eat them. My dogs eat them.
And what's the best advice if somebody out there is watching and they've entertained the thought of getting some chicks, getting some chickens, starting something that you've also created? What is the best advice that you could give to somebody starting out?
Start small and realize you've got to do it all winter long. You can't just do it in the summer when the weather's nice. You're going to be out there all winter.
And there is a cost associated with it.
Oh, there is a cost. My eggs cost more than, I know what I pay for feed. I can't sell my eggs for what other grocery stores can sell. There's, I don't have the benefit of bulk purchasing.
But you also have a coop if somebody doesn't have a barn, feed, care, maintenance. So it is something to consider. But today's conversation was extremely interesting, and we do appreciate you, Kathie, coming on the Paw Report today to talk about raising chickens and give us a little insight of Little Bit Farm in Coles County. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for joining us here on the Paw Report. I'm your host, Kelly Goodwin, and we'll see you next time. If you're a veterinarian, trainer, groomer, specialist, rescue organization, or shelter that would like to partner with the Paw Report by providing expert guests for the show, please contact us by emailing weiu@weiu.net or call 217-581-5956. If you have a topic you'd like to see on the show or questions for our experts, contact us with those too. Goats. Yes, goats are helping reduce the risk of wildfire damage in Colorado. Evan Krugel has more on the important job these animals are doing in this Paw Report Extra.
On the rolling hills of Castle Pines, something different is moving through the trees. Goats by the hundreds, eating everything in sight.
So they're doing fire mitigation here at Pine Ridge.
Danny Benz's goats are hard at work, chewing their way through oak trees that border the Pine Ridge subdivision.
Mitigation makes a huge difference.
South Metro Fire has been using the goats here for 4 years. Paid for by the city and by local homeowners, the goats eat low vegetation that could fuel fires.
So if a low to moderate intensity wildfire were to come through this open space, and it certainly could, the fire will be less likely to get into the canopies of the trees.
Unlike cattle, the goats prefer leaves and shrubs over grass. And boy, can they do some work. A single goat can eat over 10 pounds of oak leaves in a single day, clearing an entire area in no time.
It doesn't take them long. They're very efficient.
Today, neighbors got an up-close look at the work being done.
You know, the goats really bring everyone together, and it's enjoyable for the youth to come out and see that there's an alternative to chemicals and machinery of taking care of the land.
Fire mitigation, or mitigation, making a difference.
We can already see a huge difference that these goats are making for us. We're making all of us much safer.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Power Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com. Additional support for the Paw Report on WEIU is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.